Today, I'm going to tell you a true story about a little old lady who walked with a cane and barely got around, but managed to get herself convicted and sent to prison for 2 years for destruction of property. That is coming up on Flipping America today.
It's time for Flipping America, the show that teaches you how to make money in real estate. Wherever you are, whatever your situation, there is an opportunity for you.
Your host, Roger Blankenship, has participated in more than 2,000 real estate transactions and has spent over 2 decades investing, renovating, managing, and teaching others how to succeed in real estate.
And now, here's that Flipping America guy, Roger Blankenship.
Thank you, Kathy Curtis. Good to have you back on the Flipping America show. And it's sort of seeming a little bit like old times and good memories. And boy, we've got some memories. And we're going to get to those memories in just a minute. But first, let me talk to you about today's sponsor. Big thank you to Carrot for partnering with us today. Carrot websites. I used Carrot for years. And it's especially helpful for people who really don't know, don't have time, don't really want to learn how to build your own website. Carrot is a provider of websites for real estate investors. If you do your marketing right, you're going to drive traffic somewhere. Carrot sites will convert it. Carrot sites hold 45% of top Google rankings for competitive real estate keywords, and leads generated through Carrot convert at dramatically higher rates and produce significantly more profit than leads from generic websites. Every plan includes SEO optimized content, built-in lead capture, a CRM, and investor-specific templates that work just out of the box. No developers, no plugins, no maintenance headaches. If you're spending money on direct mail, PPC, or cold outreach and sending people to a mediocre website, you're just leaving deals on the table. You could try Carrot risk-free. Just scan the QR code that you see right here on the screen, or that is if you're watching this, or if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, just go to flippingamerica.net/carrot to sign up. flippingamerica.net/carrot. Let's turn now to our listener questions. We've got some good ones in this week. Let's see. Dave from Huntsville, Alabama says, if you were starting all over now, what would you do? Well, Dave, my question for you would be, do I get to know everything I know now, or do I have to start over with knowing nothing like I was when I started? Okay, let's assume that I could start over now knowing what I know now, because I kind of think that's the answer you're looking for. Knowing what I know now, if I could start over, it wouldn't be a lot different from what I did when I started. I would find a way to come up with the cash to be a bidder at the foreclosure auction, and I would get there as often as I could, and tax sales also. Why? Well, a tax sale is a really good way to make 15 to 20% return on your money, and that's if the people redeem the property. If they don't redeem the property, you can make a lot more. A foreclosure auction, a forced sale, courts have ruled that a forced sale like this can be conducted at a price or a bid that is completely unrelated to the value. It's basically based on how much the property has been, the equity has been paid down. And there's a limit to what the lenders can bid in at a foreclosure sale. So there's an opportunity. I'll keep this brief about the foreclosure auction. There's an opportunity there to buy properties at deep discounts, far below what they're worth. In fact, this is the best because a lot of properties that you might call distressed properties come with distressed situations that haven't happened overnight, and for years the property's been neglected or even abused. In foreclosure sales, it's not always the case. And I've walked into some houses that I listed for sale the next day. All I did was send the cleaning crew over there, and they didn't even need to do much. The people had just left, and they had some sort of character about them that made them want to leave the place as clean and as perfect as possible. I bought a house one time that had a cracked tile in the bathroom, and the owners that lost the house in foreclosure had left on the bathroom counter a couple of pieces of the tile and the matching grout that was used in the rest of it, so the repair job would be easier for us. I only saw that once out of thousands of deals, but still, that was remarkable. Sometimes you run into that, and even then, by the time you get the discounts, even if you have some properties that are a little bit distressed, the repairs are not usually that bad because the houses are freshly lived in most of the time. So that's what I would do. That's how I would start. I would get to the foreclosure auction. I would get to the tax sale, and then I would. I kind of coined this phrase just for now. I would use extreme aggressive caution and buy as many rental properties as I could and plan to never sell them. That's one of the biggest regrets that I might have looking back over my career. My first rental properties were not judiciously selected, and getting rid of them was one of the better decisions that I made. But going forward, buy the right properties in the right areas that you want to hang on to for a long time. Because really, when it comes to a single family home, the best way to actually make a cash flow is for someone to move in and stay there happily for 5 or 10 years. That's what you want. And in order to do that, you need to be in moderate to better areas, not the rough part of town. Thank you very much. Now, Allison from Hartford, Connecticut sent a question in, and I think maybe it was designed to hurt our feelings, but it doesn't. It's okay. And I think that also she might be surprised that we're even going to use this on the show, but we are. And here it is. Isn't it true that real estate investors can only find deals by taking advantage of people who are in a tough spot? It seems heartless to me. Well, Allison, I have to break to you some bad news. Life is hard. It's hard simply because there are people out there that are not good, people that are not nice. It's also hard because sometimes people don't make the best decisions. And between a combination of bad weather, bad decisions, and bad people, bad things are going to happen. And bad things happen, and people get into some distress, and maybe they made a bad decision to buy the house, or maybe it was a good decision when they bought the house, but things have gone badly for them ever since. These things happen. And you know what? As human beings, we can't stop that. And as the reality is, something is going to happen with those properties. I think that probably we need to talk a little bit, and it just so happens that this was a topic that I published last Sunday in REI Quick Tips. So since it's important and it's a perfect answer to this question, I'm just going to read the article as I published it last Sunday. I called it Opportunist or Problem Solver, two sides of the same coin. Foreclosure auctions are strange little gatherings. There may be 15 minutes of frantic bidding, followed by an hour in which absolutely nothing happens. Since human beings are not especially good at standing silently on courthouse steps, conversations naturally begin. Even though we were competitors, I developed friendships with many of the regulars over the years. One of them was a man named Don. He was somewhat older than I was. He was a leader in his church and one of the genuinely good men whose opinions carried weight because he didn't seem terribly impressed with himself. Years ago, Don and I were standing at the courthouse steps in Clayton County, Georgia, on a bright, crisp Tuesday morning in March. We were waiting for the foreclosure auction to begin when the woman walked up to the steps, apparently on some other business in the courthouse. And she looked at the small crowd and said, "What's going on here?" And someone explained that the foreclosure auction was about to begin. "Oh," she said, "you all are just vultures preying on the misfortunes of others." Then she continued on into the courthouse, having performed the civic duty of condemning a group of strangers before breakfast. Her comment bothered me. I didn't want it to be true, but I could understand how she had reached that conclusion. People were losing their homes. We were standing there hoping to buy those homes cheaply. The optics, as they say, were not ideal. So I asked Don what he thought. He didn't launch into a speech about capitalism, property rights, or the importance of functioning credit markets. Don was not auditioning for cable news. He simply said, "I didn't cause their problems. I just bought the house. If someone is going to buy that house today, and the people in the houses I buy will end up better off than the ones sold to some of these other guys around here or back to the bank." I've never forgotten that answer. It doesn't absolve us of responsibility. It actually gives us one. Someone was going to buy every property that day. The sale was already happening, whether we showed up or not. The question was not whether the previous owner would avoid foreclosure because I nobly declined to bid. The question was what would happen after the sale, and whether the person who bought the house would treat the former owner as a human being or merely as an obstacle between himself and the front door. From that principle, we developed a practice of visiting former owners after buying a property. And I'm going to refer to that again in the Woulda Been Viral story today. We offered them time to move out and, when appropriate, cash for keys. We tried to help them leave with some dignity, a little money, and at least a fighting chance of beginning the next chapter of their lives. We weren't required to do this. In many cases, the law gave us more aggressive options, but Don's point stayed with me. If I were going to benefit from someone else's difficult situation, I had some responsibility for how I conducted myself in the process. That doesn't mean that I stopped trying to make money. I was running a business, not an unusually complicated charity. And this is where the distinction between an opportunist and a problem solver becomes a little uncomfortable because they often possess many of the same skills. Both notice what is missing. Both recognize inefficiency, distress, delay, confusion, and unmet needs. Both move quickly. Both use available resources to change the situation. The difference is not always visible from the outside to the casual observer. Sometimes it exists primarily in the question being asked on the inside. The opportunity asks, what can I get from this? The problem solver asks, what can I fix here? Those questions lead to the same transaction. They may even produce the same purchase price, but over time they produce very different businesses, reputations, and people. An opportunist sees the homeowner's distress as leverage. A problem solver sees the distress as a reason a solution is needed. The opportunist hopes the other person is confused, isolated, or desperate enough to accept almost anything. The problem solver may still negotiate firmly, but wants the other person to understand the trade-offs and make a decision that actually addresses the problem. In pre-foreclosure work, I gradually adopted a particular mindset. I'm here to help you solve your big problem right now, which is this house and these payments. That framing mattered. It reminded me that the foreclosure itself was usually only a visible part of a larger story: a lost job, divorce, illness, business failure, family conflict, bad decisions, bad luck, or some industrious combination of all six have led to this moment. I could not repair every part of the person's life, but I might be able to solve the property problem. I also had to remember what I was not. I was not a savior. I was not there to rescue someone from the accumulated consequences of years of decisions. I was not there to reform character, heal a marriage, restore employment, or provide indefinite emotional and financial support. Investors who forget those limits sometimes discover that a rescue mission is merely a bad deal wearing a halo. The challenge was to occupy the narrow ground between exploitation and self-deception. I wanted to help in every reasonable way I could while still buying the property on terms that made sense. My desire for profit did not disappear. It simply came behind the intention to provide a legitimate solution. That order matters. Profit is not evidence of wrongdoing. In a healthy transaction, profit is evidence that value was created, risk was accepted, capital was committed, or a difficult problem was solved. The plumber who stops water from pouring through your ceiling does not become immoral when he sends an invoice. You may question the size of the invoice, especially at 2 a.m, but you do not question his right to earn one. The same is true in real estate. A seller may need speed, certainty, debt relief, a property sold as is, an inherited house emptied, tenants handled, title problems resolved, or a closing date tailored around the rest of his life. Solving those problems requires knowledge, effort, capital, risk, and often more patience than anyone's going to admit during a seminar. The fact that the investor profits does not prove that the seller was harmed. The fact that the seller is distressed does not excuse the investor from behaving honorably. Both statements can be true, which is inconvenient for people who prefer their moral reasoning prepackaged. This principle has shaped more than my investing. It's influenced the way I think about teaching and training as well. We've never charged $50,000 to teach people about real estate investing, and we actively discourage people from paying that kind of money. Is the knowledge worth more than $50,000? Properly applied? Certainly. But that's not the same as saying that classroom, online courses, or 3-day events can deliver $50,000 worth of transformation. Real estate investing is not particularly difficult to explain. It is difficult to do well. No course can fully teach someone how it feels when the contractor stops answering, the lender changes the requirements, the inspection finds 3 new problems, and the seller announces that his cousin has offered more money. That education arrives in the field, usually on a day when you had other plans. Training should shorten the learning curve, prevent avoidable mistakes, provide useful frameworks, and help people make better decisions. It cannot substitute for experience. And the person selling the training should not pretend otherwise merely because the payment processor is working. Here again, the questions matter. Am I trying to help this person become capable, or am I trying to keep this person dependent? Am I selling a useful solution, or am I selling hope at a price that requires financing? Am I being fairly compensated for experience, or am I exploiting someone's fear of missing out? These are not questions we answer once. They follow us around. Any business person who says profit never influenced a decision is either lying or has not yet reviewed the financial statements. Any business person who says profit is the only consideration eventually leaves behind a trail of former employees, former partners, employees, customers, and vendors who have learned to stop returning calls. And I might add, friends. The goal here is not purity. The goal is alignment. The seller should be better off because the problem was solved. The buyer should be better off because he was compensated for solving it. The transactions should be clear enough that neither party must invent a different version of the conversation later. I'm still aware of the balance I'm trying to maintain. Serve people, solve real problems, make a profit, and do not undersell the value of hard-earned experience. It's like trying to stand a nickel on its edge. It can be done, but it requires attention, and any bump in the table reveals which direction you might have been leaning. The woman at the courthouse steps that morning saw only one side of the coin. Perhaps some of the investors standing there were on that side of the coin. Don helped me understand that the opportunity and the problem were not separate things. They were the same event viewed from different directions. The investor's character determines which side he chooses to face. That was from REI Quick Tips, and just last Sunday. I publish this newsletter every single day, 7 days a week. Now, it's not always something like that. Sundays are reserved for the thought pieces, but the rest of the week is an actionable tip, Monday through Friday. And Saturday is a construction topic where we go in depth. And right now we're breaking down all the parts and pieces of the house and how to build hurricane-resistant homes. And you can subscribe for free. It's completely free. And all you have to do is just click on, scan the QR code that you're seeing on screen, or if you're listening to this, go to flippingamerica.net/quick tips, and that will allow you to sign up for the free newsletter. Give it a try for a week. A little while ago, we were huddling up and decided that we were going to start a segment called Woulda Been Viral. We didn't have video cameras rolling on our lives then. Well, we don't really even do that now. But we thought if cameras had been rolling at this moment, that could have gone viral. So today's story is a true story about a little old lady. Now, okay, we didn't know who lived in the houses that we bought. And this turned out to not be the last little old lady we ever encountered, but she really wasn't even that little, actually. But we bought this house in Clayton County, Georgia, at the courthouse steps. And so we went to the door of this particular house, and this lady came to the door. She was hunched over, walking on a cane, and we could see over her shoulder that nothing had been done in the house. It smelled a little bit like a combination of rotting garbage, yesterday's dinner, and I don't know, a slight sewer smell, and maybe some stale socks or something in there. It was just not pleasant. The entire place was cluttered, and I was thinking, oh boy. I got a little bit of a look into the living room, and this was June. The Christmas tree was still up, and it was covered with dust and almost looked like it had cobwebs on it. And this lady hobbled to the door, kind of bent over, and but I could see that in her former days, she'd been pretty tall, probably around 6 feet tall. But she was, walking with her cane, and she came to greet us, and we told her what was going on, and she said, "Well, I'm not leaving." You have to. You don't really have a choice, but you have the option of walking away with some money and we're here to give you time and give you help. Um, and she just said, I'm not leaving. And she slammed the door on us, and that was that. So, of course, we had to do what we have to do for our business and the people that were investing in us. And so we went to the court and started the dispossessory proceeding. And um, the next thing I know, my partner Jeff called me up probably a week or so later. He said, guess what? We're being sued. I said, by whom? And he said that lady's name. We're being sued by her. We are being sued. I said, why are we being sued? She said, well, she actually filed suit against the lender and against us. I said, oh man, I've never been sued before. What are we going to do? He said, I don't know. I've never been sued before either, so we'll figure it out. So we went and sat down with a lawyer. And the lawyer said, nothing probably is going to come of this, but it will go better for you if you have some representation in the courtroom. There's going to be a hearing because she may not have a case, but since she filed with the court and paid the filing fee, she's going to get a hearing. And so you need to show up at that hearing because you don't want her to win a default judgment. Okay. So we showed up at the hearing, and we were standing around outside waiting for our turn to come up. And this other lady approached me and said, excuse me, are you the ones that bought this house? I said, yes. And she said, well, and she said the lady's name, asked me to drive her over here because she doesn't like to get out in her car and she doesn't drive much anymore. And she said, I don't know what I'm doing here. She just told me that she's going to call on me to testify. I don't know her that well. And what I do know of her, I don't really like her. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm here as a defendant. So we'll just have to see what happens. And we went in there, and it was just that lady who was acting as her own counsel and the person who gave her the ride over there, and my partner Jeff and I and our attorney and the judge. That was all that was in the hearing. It wasn't actually like a trial yet. We were just in a preliminary hearing, I suppose. And the judge asked her what she had to say for herself, and I don't remember all of the back and forth proceedings, but I remember sitting there thinking, this is nuts. But she said, I have a witness I want to call to the stand. And he said, okay. So she put her neighbor lady on the stand, and she said, now, are you aware that I haven't paid my mortgage in 2 years? And I'm thinking, I was trying hard not to burst out laughing, and so was Jeff. Because basically she's just admitting that she hadn't paid her mortgage. And the lady said, I don't know you that well. I don't know whether you've been paying your mortgage or not, but I guess you haven't been. She said, well, do you know that I haven't been paying my mortgage because I'm elderly and infirmed? And that turned out to be one of her favorite phrases. She was elderly and infirmed. And so I've not been able to work, and I haven't been able to pay my mortgage because I'm elderly and infirmed. And the lady said, I guess. And she asked her some more really inane questions. I don't remember them all. I remember elderly and infirmed, and her neighbor kind of being put on the spot to answer questions. She had no idea what the answer to them would be, or even what answer her neighbor was looking for. And so after about 5 or 8 minutes of that, she concluded, and the judge looked at us and said, do you have anything? And our attorney stood up and said, Your Honor, the plaintiff here has basically made our case for us. We have nothing to add and nothing to say. And the judge said, fine. I'm going to summarily rule in the defendant's favor, and you have 30 days to exit the property, or a writ of eviction will be granted, and the sheriff's deputies will come over and set your belongings on the curb and maintain peace while you are moved out. And she said, that's not fair. I want to appeal. He said, if you want to appeal, go right ahead. He told her what court, where to go down the hall, how much money it was going to be. He said, but listen, it's not for me to give you any kind of advice, but I'll tell you, you don't have a case, you don't have a chance, just be wasting your money. Well, with that, she got angry and left the courtroom with her neighbor following behind. And, we talked to the neighbor a minute or two later, I guess, while she was debating whether she was going to go file an appeal, and gave the neighbor lady our phone number and said, let us know when she's moved out, because we're going to have to come over and check in about 3 weeks to see if she's gone. But if you'll let us know, we'd appreciate that so much. And she said, sure, fine, no problem. About 3 or 4 days later, the phone call came. You better get over here. And we said, why? She said, you just need to get over here, like right now. And when we got over there, it was unbelievable. This little old lady who walked with a cane. Now, one of the best parts about her house, I failed to mention this earlier, that I admired when we got there, the best thing in the whole house was the front door. It was solid walnut. It was beautiful. It was inlaid and carved and very heavy, solid wooden door. Well, this lady had ripped the door off the hinges using some sort of a crowbar or something and thrown it into the front yard. And then she had proceeded to go through the house, on the outside of the house, mostly on the first floor, and she broke every window. She broke it into the house just to make sure that the glass would go inside the house. And then she went upstairs and broke all of the windows upstairs. She had broken every single window in the entire house. Then she had started throwing things into the yard and into the driveway. The water heater was lying there in the driveway, where apparently she had ripped it out of her garage with her bare hands. And then she took a sledgehammer or a crowbar or something to it and beat it to smithereens right there in the driveway. And other pieces of the house were thrown out, and damage was done all throughout the house. And she was ripping shutters off of the wall and throwing them into the yard. And after she paused for a minute, she looked around and saw that we were standing there. Of course, the whole neighborhood was standing there watching, but she saw Jeff and me standing there, and she came up and wagged her finger at us, and no cane, no limp, no infirmity at all, standing straight and about 6 feet tall. She wagged her finger at us and said, I'm leaving now, but if I ever see you again, I'm going to kill you both. Whoa. All right. Well, don't really know what to do about that. But she backed her old beat-up car out of the driveway and took off around the corner. So we didn't have a whole lot of option, because we knew that we needed to file an insurance claim. And in order to do that, we were going to have a police report. So we got the police out there, and we filled out the police report and found out that what she had done was terroristic threat and felony destruction of property. And so a warrant was put out for her arrest. Nothing happened. They didn't really go looking for her. I didn't think they would. And we were out there, over the next few weeks, repairing everything and putting the house back on the market. And we got to know the neighbor lady pretty well. And she told us one time she heard that the lady had run off to North Carolina to move in with a daughter or somebody. And, well, we didn't care. If she's in North Carolina, we were in Atlanta, Georgia, that's far enough away. We don't have to worry about her killing us the next time she sees us. And we sort of put that thought out of her mind. But we heard 2 years later that she came back over to Georgia and got pulled over for driving apparently under the influence. And when they were processing that, they discovered there was a warrant out for her arrest, and they brought her back to Clayton County, and she went to jail for 2 years. And that is an interesting story that I wish we could have had the cameras rolling when we were watching her throw that stuff out into the yard. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening in, America. We appreciate it so much. Remember to subscribe wherever you are. Invite a friend to listen. Share it with them. And here's your quote for the day. Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
You've been listening to Flipping America with Roger Blankenship. For more resources, free investing tips, and information about today's show, visit flippingamerica.net. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and share the show with a friend. Until next time, keep your eyes open. Opportunities are everywhere. This is Flipping America.